Hey, what's up guys? I'm Jack from Terrestria, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a gent guitar tone. Alrighty, so here I am in Pro Tools with the Fortin Cali. We're going to go through the demonstration in a second here, but I just wanted to show you guys what the tone sounds like in and not in the mix first. So let's go ahead and take a listen to that. So starting from the default in the Fortin Cali, this is just a bypassed version of the plugin. This is what the tone is. These are the settings. So I'm just going to be working towards these settings here with this plugin here on the right, which is currently on default. So starting off with the master, it looks like I didn't really change anything there. The thump switch, it looks like is on the right side, so let's check that out and see why I would have done that. It was here on the default. So I think that in the middle position it sounds just a little bit too thumpy, like a little bit too low. But the right side was kind of a nice balance of the two. I think the left side was like maybe just a little bit too scooped. And then the presence goes up a little bit. Not a huge difference there. Hair switch stays the same. Let's see why. These switches make a huge difference. I thought that on the right side it sounded a little bit too like muffled and low-endy. And then the left side just sounded a little flubby to me for some reason. So I just went with the middle position. Bass turns down a little bit, it looks like. Kind of cleans the tone up a little bit, and I did not do the pull saturation. It definitely is like a very aggressive thing. It kind of sounds like it's getting like pinched through an overdrive or something like that, but I didn't think it was necessary, and I kind of ended up doing the overdrive in the actual overdrive pedal, which I'll go into here in a second. So, and then with the middle knob, I turned that one down, but let's see how it was. Kind of scoop some of the mids out. It can kind of help to create some space in the mix, and I just kind of like the way that it sounded. The violence switch I kept in the default position. I just thought that it lost some of its aggression when you switch it over to the right side. Some of the gain just kind of goes away for some reason. I don't know the inner workings of this amp, so I don't know why these things happen, but that's just kind of the way that switch works. And then I turned the treble up a little bit, just to introduce a little bit more edge. Bright switch, I put on the right side. Not really a huge difference between the left and right positions, but the middle position doesn't really sound quite as aggressive, and it sounds a little bit muddy, so I didn't go with the middle position. And we also, it looks like, turn down the gain on here and turn the gain up on this knob. So kind of brought some more almost like low girth into the tone with this one, and then here, I don't know, that made an adjustment too. And then looking at the pedals, definitely a very important part of the tone. The Zool pedal on the left here, that's just like a noise gate, so it doesn't really make a huge difference, but let's check it out, what I might have done. It doesn't change the tone, it's just, like I said, it's just a noise gate. And then the hex drive, this is a pretty important portion of the tone, so let's see, the drive is currently all the way down in the default position, but I have it a little past 12 o'clock, so let's see what that's like. Adds a lot of girth to the tone, But then I sort of compensated for it a little bit by bringing the level down. And what this does is, if you imagine an overdrive pedal going into an amp, it's going to turn down, it's going to lessen the amount of signal that's feeding the gain stage inside the amp, so you're going to have less distortion if you turn down the level, and a little bit less saturation. It's going to kind of tighten the tone up a little bit. So drive and level kind of work in a similar way, but in this case I thought turning the level down was helpful. And then I turned the tone down just a bit. Kind of rounds the tone off a little bit. It's a rhythm guitar tone, so it doesn't need like a ton of high end, or at least like really high end. I'm going to get into that in a second. And then looking at the cab with the mics, I swapped out the right hand mic for 184 instead of the 414, but let's see. So that's just kind of the difference in tone with the 184. And then I changed the position. So brought it right to the center of the cone, but then I also brought it down a little bit. Pretty in your face, a lot of like kind of aggression and sort of stuff in there, which I like. Brought the level up. And then here with the 57, I kept the 57 and changed the position very slightly. I didn't really change this one very much. Brought that a little bit closer or in line with the center of the cone. And then brought the level up very slightly. Alright, so that is the amp portion of the guitar tone. Okay, so now to look at the EQ portion of the guitar tone. This is kind of the mixing stage of the process where we're kind of fitting the guitar tone into the rest of the mix. So a lot of these decisions actually have to do with kind of working the guitar tone around what the other elements in the mix are, like the vocal, the snare drum, the kick, bass, everything. So I'm going to go through and kind of just explain each of these decisions. This high-pass filter is a 12 dB per octave at like 65 hertz, so kind of just to cut out some rumbly low end. There isn't really a ton of it, but it's there, and it's kind of conflicting with the kick drum unnecessarily, so we cut that out. But let's check how it is without it. I'm going to bypass all these bands real quick. Okay, so starting with the high pass here, let's check it out without it. It makes a small difference, but it's really just the fact that you don't want anything down there because it's not going to be necessary from a tonal standpoint. The guitar doesn't produce any frequencies that low, at least not in this song. And it's just going to conflict with the bass drum, which is pretty low. So then let's check out, we've got an EQ here kind of to cut out. It's a dynamic EQ cutting out at 107, kind of some low mids. And like I said, it's dynamic, so it's going to sort of change the amount that it cuts based on how much signal is there. So let's check that out. And that makes a pretty significant difference. It's only about 3 dB, maybe a little more, that it's cutting out. And it's pretty consistent the way that I have the threshold of it set up. The threshold I brought down a little bit so that it would pretty consistently be cutting, but sometimes it does pull up. So that's just to kind of clean up the tone and allow the bass to have some more room in the mix. And then we've got this band here. This is, let's see. Kind of cuts out some of that ooiness. The lower end of the mix, like the low mids, is definitely a problem area in metal that we really try and clean up to create space, especially in this song because there's like a synth element in there. So if we get rid of this band, and also this one, bring them back. So it kind of leaves some more room for that low synth element to actually be able to be heard. And then there's this additional cut in just the mid channel. Let's check that out, just the guitar solo. And that's actually to make some space for the snare drum, because the warmth of the snare drum resides in that area. So I only cut it out in the mid because the snare drum is, you know, in the center of the mix. So that way you kind of get some of the frequency content in this band still in the sides, but it's cut out in the center so that you can leave some room for the snare. And then also for some warmth in the vocal and in the bass. Alright, and then this is a band that's probably doing nothing, it looks like. And then let's go through these first. So there's a couple small cuts. Kind of evens out the tone a little bit, gets rid of some of that searing quality that I might have introduced at some point during the amp stage that maybe I didn't like too much afterwards. You can't get it entirely perfect, that's why you use an EQ. And then you boost, or I'm boosting 5K. This makes a huge difference. It really cuts the rhythm guitars through the mix and kind of gives it that djenty quality. Huge difference. And I actually automate this EQ. So there's a portion in this song where this EQ goes down a little bit because they're kind of like aggressive chords. Okay, so going back to what we were listening to before, finally the last portion of this EQ is this low pass filter, which kind of gets rid of some of this like weird digital sounding stuff that I'm not a huge fan of. I just don't really think it's necessary, and I don't really think it sounds like a real guitar amp. But let's see what it's like without it. So it kind of rounds off the tone a little bit, gets rid of some of that like really high stuff that is not necessary, especially for rhythm guitars. It might be useful for a lead guitar, but it's better to cut it out of the rhythm guitars to let the lead guitar have that space all the way up there. Just kind of gives it some roundness and maybe even fakes a little bit of warmth that I might have cut out. Our brains kind of will think opposite. So if we're cutting high end, it almost sounds like we're boosting low end. And if we're, you know, cutting low end, it might sound like we're boosting high end. So sometimes there's ways to play tricks with the brain. But this is it. This is the final product of the guitar tone. So let's just go ahead and listen to it in the song. Alright, so that's what we've got for the guitar tone today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for more Terrestria content.